So Arvind Kejriwal, he is the Chief Minister of the capital Delhi and leader of a party called AAP. He was arrested from his residence the night of the 21st after raids were conducted on his residence. And he's being charged essentially with corruption by a central agency called the Enforcement Directorate, which deals with licensing regulation. So the specific charges are that he was involved in a liquor licensing scam that was born out of a liquor policy that he instituted back in 2021 that was hoped to modernize sales and give the state some extra revenue. But the Enforcement Directorate has now alleged in court in Delhi here that Mr. Kejriwal received the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars in kickbacks from this liquor scam. So they are alleging that the policy itself was framed in a way to privilege his AAP party members and that they promoted cartel formation. So these are the specific allegations against him, Bev.
Yeah. What sort of response has there been to his arrest?
Well, it is a massive piece of news for a sitting chief minister to be arrested. Mr. Kejriwal is now the first sitting chief minister in the country to be arrested. But he isn't the first chief minister to be involved or accused of corruption like this or a scam of this size. So the previous government in India, the Congress, had ultimately lost the election in 2014 when the BJP came into power because of its alleged or actual involvement in a number of these scams. Corruption has been a big issue in India ever since independence. So it's not unusual for chief ministers or other ministers to be accused of these kinds of things. But what is unusual is for a sitting chief minister to be arrested in the capital just a month out from elections. That is unusual. And so the reaction to the arrest, his party members have been out in force. They have been out protesting. They have called for a nationwide protest tomorrow and then again on the 31st. So they're really going out there. But I was at one of the protests on Friday, and while there is a lot of anger from party members, I didn't see the outpouring of support or presence from ordinary people the way you might have seen a few years ago for something this big that's happened. So we went to the protest and there was a lot of party members, a lot of police, a lot of journalists to cover, but not very many other people that I could speak to. But what was happening was there were waves of these party members arriving at the protest site, and police were detaining them, shoving them into buses, taking them away 10 to 30 to 40 people at a time. And this constant taking away of the waves of people that were coming to protest makes it really difficult to judge how big it actually was.
Yeah, interesting. You know, you mentioned that an election now, of course, is not far off. The Prime Minister has been criticised for trying to silence his opposition. How significant is an arrest like that in this context and in the Indian context?
Well, an arrest like this, it's never been done before. We've not had a sitting chief minister arrested before. Earlier this year, in January, there was another opposition chief minister who was arrested again by the Enforcement Directorate in a similar kind of case, but he resigned before he was actually arrested, which is what makes Kejriwal right now the first sitting chief minister to ever be arrested. So this is a big story. Media outlets are covering it. Journalists are out in force at the protests. But what I've seen on the ground is that there is a real reticence and a hesitance on the part of ordinary people to come out and protest, which is a funny thing because Delhi used to be a very popular site of protest. People would take out marches and rallies and they would end them in Delhi because this is the seat of government. So it is a change from what I've noticed in previous years when I used to report here.
Yeah. What do we think the next few weeks is going to hold for the Chief Minister?
Well, this issue has been ongoing for a few weeks. So the party, the Aam Aadmi Party, or AAP as it's called here, has been saying, you know, we're expecting this to happen. We will govern from jail. So Kejriwal has been in jail, in Enforcement Directorate custody, and he has been giving directives to his ministers to, deal with Delhi's water issues, or he's acting as though it's governance as normal, but the party members are still taking out massive protests, planning to take out massive protests. And the other members of this big opposition alliance that has formed to take on the BJP juggernaut this year will also be out in force. So there's big protests planned at the PM's residence. It remains to be seen whether those will actually eventuate, given how much security there is at the PM's residence, and given that previous protests have seen police in Delhi block off entire roads, erect barricades so that, the law and order situation doesn't go out of control. So nationwide protests are planned, big protests are planned for the PM's residence, but we'll have to see, and we'll have to watch the election. We'll be here covering it.
Indeed. And do you think, Hannah, that there is any chance, sort of what impact all of these things are having on the ability of the opposition to really perform and run effectively ahead of this election?
Yeah, so that is what the opposition figures are saying. Both Kejriwal, the Congress party, who used to be in power back in 2014, they're claiming that it's an organized effort by the ruling party just ahead of elections to cripple their ability to pay their workers. They've said that their funds have been frozen. The government denies that all their funds have been frozen, but the opposition says their ability to use the money that they have is being absolutely crippled. And this is a political conspiracy to stop them from being able to campaign effectively.
Well, we look forward with interest to your coverage of the elections coming up. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Bev.